The ultimate deciders of these grants will be the political employees at the agencies. I would imagine in this situation, it would likely be HHS.
The political employees? The political appointees like yourself?
The political appointees. OMB does not issue grants. We issue guidance, uniform guidance on grants. So I would not make decisions on a specific grant.
But if someone calls you, I mean, again, this is like, you can't want the big job, but then not answer the big questions. I think the idea that First Amendment activities would be, quote, anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration, you understand that you're creating a climate of fear around things that are actually, it's the opposite of anti-American. It's the most American thing in the world, the First Amendment. So I think you've raised a lot of concerns in your testimony of the last couple of days, but the idea that the administration would put that kind of language out there to intimidate and scare people out of freedom of speech is something that is the most anti-American thing I've seen in a long time. Yield back.
Then I'll show you right here, Democratic Senator Gallego cross-examining another pick of Donald Trump, Charlton Allen, who's being picked to be on the Federal Labor Relations Authority, General Counsel. Let's take a look at what goes on here. Let's play it.
Mr. Allen, in the 1990s, you founded a conservative campus publication called the Carolina Review. If you look behind me, you'll see the front cover of an edition of the Carolina Review depicting Aaron Nelson, a Jewish candidate for student body president. Your magazine altered Nelson's photo depicting him with the horns and a pitchfork. Inside the article says the difference between Aaron Nelson is simple. He's Jewish. Yes or no, Ms. Nelson, do you stand by this depiction?
Well, first of all, in terms...
Turn your mic on. Your mic.
Sorry. I'm Mr. Allen, not Mr. Nelson. But in terms of that cover, I would, if I were 30 years ago advocating for the review, I would say don't run that cover. I think it was a mistake. That said, if you look at full context of the article, you're taking a quote out of context.
Okay, so I may take the quote out of context, but that's not being taken out of context, right? The pitchfork with the horns?
Right.
Is that, right. Because that's kind of hard to get out of context.
In terms of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, our chief rival was the Blue Devils, still are the Blue Devils. And the cartoonist's intention was to make an analogy to that.
Is that he is desperate to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And he's going to use all of the means at his disposal, which are not inconsiderable. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard, last I checked, is not in the business of checking on election integrity or security. I think that the bigger mission here for Donald is to undermine the American people's faith in free and fair elections. This is something he's been engaged in for years now. And again, now he has a lot more power in order to do that. It's a very worrisome sign. Tulsi Gabbard is the director of national intelligence. So unless they suspect some foreign interference that didn't benefit Donald in 2020, she has no business being there. And I think the American people do deserve answers about that.
But 2020 is 6 years ago. Why is Trump unable to accept his defeat after many investigations and rulings prove the election results were correct? Why can't he let it go?
He can't let anything go that paints him as a loser. And even though he's back in the Oval Office, even though he has more money now because of the corruption in the Trump regime.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video. We put a lot of time into research, fact-checking, and making sure every story we bring you is informative and meaningful. As an independent channel, your support truly keeps this work going. So if you find value in our reporting, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and help us reach more people with stories that matter. Your support means a lot, and it allows us to keep giving our best every single day. April 9th, 2026. The grand foyer of the White House. And out walks Melania Trump, unscheduled, unannounced, no advance warning to the press pool to deliver a statement nobody saw coming. She stands at the podium and says, essentially, the lies about me and Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. She says the people spreading them are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. She says she was never on Epstein's plane. She says he didn't introduce her to her husband. And then, and this is the part that made every reporter in that room sit up straight, she calls on Congress to hold open testimony from Epstein survivors. Now, if you've been tracking this administration's Epstein problem as obsessively as I have, and I track this file every single day, you know that please, Congress, let's have more testimony about Epstein is not a sentence anyone inside that White House once said out loud by anyone, ever, for any reason. This is the administration that has spent over a year trying to make the Epstein files story go away. And here's the First Lady, unprompted, standing in the grand foyer, actively pulling the subject back into the news cycle herself. And within days, the one person in America best positioned to explain exactly why that statement was so strange stepped up to do it. Mary Trump, trained clinical psychologist, the president's own niece, author of 2 books analyzing this family from the inside, and she went on the record with a theory that cuts right to the heart of it.
And you can see over here as well, and we can just play the B-roll for this one, that he can barely lift his right arm. You see that right there? We'll show you B-roll here also of him trying to walk down the stairs when he was arriving in France. It was a very rough entrance as well. I'll show you here when French President Emmanuel Macron alerts Donald Trump that the head of Egypt, that the leader of Egypt, Sisi, is right there. And Donald Trump is like lost, and Macron has to say, "Do you know who this is? This is the leader of Egypt, Donald. This is Sisi. This is the leader of Egypt, Donald. Do you know who this guy is?" And then Donald Trump clearly doesn't know who he's even talking to. Here, let's play this clip right here.
Did you see President Sisi? Yes. I never decided to stroke my culture.
Now I'll show you when he was with Canadian Prime Minister Carney. I'll show you this first one, about 18 seconds or so of this. You have Prime Minister Carney's selling Donald Trump on Chinese electric vehicles being purchased by Canada right now. And this is in retaliation for United States tariffs against Canada. And then just watch how Carney talks to him, though. Less than 3, and it's caught on hot mic, but less than 3% of our market, 49,000 vehicles. It's a cap. We capped it. Hard line, hard line. I thought you'd like it. I thought you'd like it. And then Donald Trump goes, "Good. I like it. Good. I like it." Watch this for yourself here. Let's play it. And then take a look at this one over here. This is sound enhanced and zoom in by an account called Table Salt. Here you go. You can see the zoom in right here. Here, play this clip. And this is how world leaders had to talk to him. All the world leaders were talking to him like this. Here's Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. Here's how she's trying to, speak with him. Here, let's play this clip. Look, if you're in this community, you're paying attention. You know what's happening, and a lot of what's happening, it's directly affecting your Medicare. Plans are being discontinued, premiums are going up, And the broker you might have talked to probably pushing Medicare Advantage plans even if they aren't right for you. That's why I want you to know about Chapter. They're the only advisors who compare every Medicare plan in the country. Thousands of people from this community have already used them. One viewer, Kevin in Florida, is saving $2,100 a year. Another, Steven, finally has a plan that covers his dialysis. And for the Midas Mighty, a call with Chapter is free and takes just 20 minutes. So if you're on the right plan, they'll tell you. And if not, they'll help you find a plan that fits your needs. I want you to know that we've gotten such incredible feedback from the Midas Mighty about Chapter. Frankly, it is overwhelming the positivity that is out there for Chapter. And so I'm so glad to be affiliated with it. I'm so glad you're all having great experiences. So call 82 Medicare today to speak with Chapter. That is 82 Medicare, and feel confident in your Medicare coverage.
So Donald finally emerged from whatever cave he was hiding in over the last few days, and he's exactly the same. I know, shocking. He came out to make some big announcements that turned out to be meaningless, really. But in the midst of it all, he managed to threaten yet another blue state, Colorado this time. We'll get to that.
That Melania wasn't clearing her name. She was, in Mary's words, getting ahead of something. So today, full nerd deep dive, what Melania actually said, why Mary Trump thinks it doesn't add up, what the documented record actually shows, and where this goes from here. I'm going to handle these sensitive parts of this carefully and soberly, the way this subject demands. No speculation dressed up as fact, allegations clearly marked as allegations, survivors treated with respect. Let's get into it. First, you need to understand who Mary Trump actually is, because her credibility here isn't just she's family and she's mad. It's specific, and it's earned. Mary Trump is a clinical psychologist by training, a real doctorate, real clinical background, not a pundit borrowing the language of psychology for a hot take. She's Fred Trump Jr., .quote's daughter, Donald's older brother, the one who died young, an alcoholic, after the family reportedly ground him down for being the soft one who wanted to be a pilot instead of a killer in the family business. Mary grew up inside that family, watched the dynamics up close her entire life, and then turned her professional training on her own uncle in her 2020 book, Too Much and Never Enough, a genuine bestseller, and one of the few insider accounts of this family that comes with actual clinical credentials behind it, rather than just proximity. And she's not just an opinion haver. She was a key source for the New York Times' Pulitzer Prize-winning 2018 investigation into the Trump family's decades of tax practices. She reportedly provided the paper with thousands of pages of internal financial documents that helped establish the family's wealth, was in significant part built on aggressive and possibly fraudulent tax strategies, not the self-made genius story Donald has always sold. That's not family drama. That's a documented, award-winning piece of journalism that Mary Trump helped make possible with actual paper records. When she says something about how this family manages a crisis, she is speaking from the single best-informed vantage point that exists outside the family's own lawyers. So when Mary Trump goes on a podcast to dissect a Melania Trump statement, this isn't a niece being catty, this is the most credentialed, most historically reliable internal source on this family's psychology and finances, doing exactly what she spent 6 years doing, reading the family's behavior against the available evidence and telling you what she sees. And it's worth understanding just how long she's been doing this and how consistent her method has stayed. Too Much and Never Enough wasn't a one-off tell-all cash-in. It came out in 2020, mid-presidency, and it sold something like 1 million copies in a single day, becoming one of the fastest-selling non-fiction books in modern publishing history. She followed it with a second book, The Reckoning, widening the lens from her uncle specifically to the broader story of American racism and dysfunction she argues Trump exploited rather than invented. Since then, she's built an entire ongoing media presence, a podcast of her own, a Substack, regular television and radio appearances, all built around the same basic offer. I grew up inside this family. I have the clinical training to actually analyze what I saw, and I'm going to keep doing that analysis in public in real time as the presidency unfolds.
Speech is something that is the most anti-American thing I've seen in a long time. Yield back.
Then I'll show you right here, Democratic Senator Gallego cross-examining another pick of Donald Trump, Charlton Allen, who's being picked to be on the Federal Labor Relations Authority, General Counsel. Let's take a look at what goes on here. Let's play it.
Mr. Allen, in the 1990s, you founded a conservative campus publication called the Carolina Review. If you look behind me, you'll see the front cover of an edition of the Carolina Review depicting Aaron Nelson, a Jewish candidate for student body president. Your magazine altered Nelson's photo depicting him with the horns and a pitchfork. Inside the article says the difference between Aaron Nelson is simple. He's Jewish. Yes or no, Mr. Nelson, do you stand by this depiction?
Well, first of all,
turn your mic on. Your mic.
Sorry. I'm Mr. Allen, not Mr. Nelson. But in terms of that cover, I would, if I were 30 years ago advocating for the review, I would say don't run that cover. I think it was a mistake. That said, if you look at full context of the article, you're taking a quote out of context.
Okay, so it may take the quote out of context, but that's not being taken out of context, right? The pitchfork with the horns?
Right.
Is that, right. Because that's kind of hard to get out of context.
In terms of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, our chief rival was the Blue Devils, still are the Blue Devils. And the cartoonist's intention was to make an analogy to that.
So everything happened was just a total coincidence that the Jewish candidate happened to have a pitchfork and horns, and that also at the same time inside the context, so the difference with Nelson is simple, he's Jewish, and the difference being between them and the Blue Devils. So the difference is that he is a Jewish versus a Blue Devil. Is that what your defense is?
No, sir. The point is this. Mr. Nelson voted not to fund a Christian group. He voted to fund the Jewish group. He voted to fund the pagan group. But on two separate times, he voted not to fund InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And it raises a conflict of interest when he was a member of a group that he voted for.
You certainly remember in detail this incident in question for someone who wants to forget it. So do you stand by the statement that was made of that time period regarding Mr. Nelson then?
What statement are you referring to?
Well, I would say overall this anti-Semitic statement and depiction of this gentleman.
I would not say that it's anti-Semitic. We were the group that was calling for the equal treatment of all student religions.
So it's not anti-Semitic to say your difference with Nelson is simple. He's Jewish. The difference between a Blue Devil and Nelson is the fact that he's Jewish. You stand by that then?
The point was this. He voted for the Jewish group, and on two separate occasions, he voted not to fund.
I'm Mary Trump. Yes, the other one of those. You might know my uncle is the authoritarian, convicted criminal con man currently wrecking the country from the safety of the Oval Office. But for the vast majority of my life, I've just known him as a... Interesting things about him. Deep down, he's a very insecure person. He's very afraid.
That's not a single outburst. That's a 6-year body of work with a consistent through line, which is exactly why individual claims like the getting ahead of something theory land with more weight than a random cable news pundit's hot take would. And on the financial side, it's worth being precise about what her role actually was, because helped break a Pulitzer-winning story gets thrown around loosely. The 2018 New York Times investigation, which won the Pulitzer Prize for explanatory reporting, examined decades of Trump family tax strategies going back to Fred Trump Sr., strategies the Times' reporting characterized as including instances of what it described as outright fraud in the transfer of wealth between generations, dramatically reducing the tax bill on hundreds of millions of dollars. Mary Trump was reported to be a significant source who provided internal financial documents that helped the paper's reporters piece together decades of transactions that had never been public. The family's central origin myth that Donald built his fortune himself through genius and hustle took real documented damage from that reporting, and Mary Trump's fingerprints are on the paper trail that made it possible. Now let's get into what actually happened at that podium, because the specifics matter enormously here. Melania's statement, delivered live at the White House on April 9th, she said the lies about her and Epstein need to end today. She acknowledged, because she couldn't not, there are photographs that she and Epstein had been photographed together, that they overlapped so.
Now that's how you cross-examine and expose Donald Trump's nominees. Democrats in the United States Senate cross-examine Donald Trump's picks for critical federal government positions. Let me show you what went down. You have Democratic Senator Merkley cross-examining Trump's pick to be the Deputy White House Budget Director, Hal Duncan. Watch what went down here. Let's play this clip.
Do you believe the 2020 election was rigged?
I believe that Joe Biden was certified as the winner of the 2020 election.
He was certified, yes, but do you believe the election outcome was rigged?
Senator, I appreciate the question. As mentioned, I believe that Joe Biden was certified as the winner of the 2020 election.
Okay. Duly noted that you're not responding to the question.
Then you had Democratic Senator Tim Kaine make the point even clearer. Let's play it.
Was the 2024 presidential election rigged?
Senator, President Trump won the 2024 presidential election.
Yeah, folks, how about that? So he was asked twice, was the 2020 presidential election rigged? And he said President Biden was certified to be the winner. He wouldn't answer the question. Saying President Biden was certified as the winner of that election is like saying today is Tuesday, June 16. I mean, it's a fact. But he wouldn't acknowledge that President Biden won that race. Now, there's only one of two reasons, Mr. Duncan. You have either fallen victim to the conspiracy mindset that says that that election was rigged. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, you shouldn't be let anywhere near the position you've been nominated for. Or, President Biden won the election, but you're afraid of making an insecure president mad by acknowledging that fact. You answered so easily when I asked you the question about 2024. You didn't fight, you didn't evade, you didn't obscure, you didn't try to end run. You said President Trump won the election, which he did. He won the popular vote, he won the Electoral College. The answer was just as simple about 2020. The fact that you were unable to give the simple answer about 2020 raises real serious questions about you. Let me ask you this.
Then we move on to Democratic Senator Blumenthal, who was cross-examining one of Donald Trump's pick Bartholomew about the same types of questions. Here, let's play this clip right here.
Yes. So let me test your independence. Who won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden as certified by the Senate?
No, Mr. Bartholomew. Who won the 2020 election? We have seen that script. By the way, you should check with the White House. That script has been abandoned. They have a new one.
Oh. Well, my understanding from the 2020 election is we had an election.
And
Joe
who
Biden
won it?
Joe Biden was certified the winner of that election. That is a fact.
Who won the popular vote?
From what I recall in reporting at the time, that was Joe Biden.
And who won the Electoral College in the 2020 election?
Again, my recollection, and he served as president, Joe Biden would have been certified the winner of the electoral.
Specifically in regards to the Peace Prize, it doesn't have to be more complicated than the fact that Barack Obama got one. And he can't handle that. But there's a more general and serious issue here. Donald is a deeply insecure man. And I refer to him often as a black hole of need, and he's constantly in search of things to fill that void. Usually it's money, but sometimes it's recognition, and sometimes it's power. But the problem for us is that there's literally nothing that he can get. There is nothing that he can steal. There is no compliment he can receive that will make him feel better about himself. So he is always in search of the next thing, whether it's more money, whether it's more power, or whether it's stealing property, territory from sovereign nations. This is
socially from time to time in New York and Palm Beach circles. But she said she was never friends with him, never had a relationship with him or his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, was never on his plane, and that he had nothing to do with introducing her to Donald. She addressed a 2002 email exchange with Maxwell directly, calling it nothing more than casual correspondence, a trivial note. And she closed by warning people to be cautious about what you believe regarding fake images and stories that she said have circulated for years. And then the line that turned this from a defensive statement into a political one. She called for Congress to allow Epstein survivors to testify openly. Here's why that last part is the whole story. And it's the piece Mary Trump zeroed in on immediately. This administration's posture on Epstein for over a year has been containment, minimize, redirect, call it a hoax when convenient, as Trump himself has done. And here comes the First Lady, completely unprompted, with reportedly no advance approval from Donald's own staff, actively inviting more scrutiny, more testimony, more cameras pointed at exactly the subject the building has been trying to smother. According to reporting at the time, White House officials were reportedly caught off guard by the statement. Trump himself told the New York Times shortly afterward that he knew his wife wanted to say something about Epstein, eventually, but that he didn't know what she was actually going to say.
Donald Trump looks like death at the G7 as his health is collapsing. Folks, it's getting really bad. I just want to bring out the receipts and go one by one with you on everything that we've observed. This is a real photo of Donald Trump. This is what he looks like now. This isn't an AI image. He's really gained a massive amount of weight. While he was there with world leaders at the G7, he couldn't stand up straight. He was kind of hunched over, leaning forward. You see him right there with MBZ, the leader of the United Arab Emirates. Let's just zoom in on the right hand right now. You see what the right hand looks like? What about the left hand? Let's zoom in. He's got this visible crack mark on his left hand. I'm not sure if that's an injection site, but both of his hands you see are discolored and rotting away. And it's not just his kind of physical weight. It's not just the hands that are rotting. Take a look at this photo of him, Zelensky, Rubio. Zoom in on his legs right there. I mean, do you see how swollen the entire legs are right there, going all the way down to his feet right there? I'll show you right here. Prime Minister Carney and world leaders would try to talk with Donald Trump. And, you know, I'll show you what kind of Carney's conversation with Donald Trump was like right there. But they have to like repeat themselves over and over again, you know. And so Carney, I'll show you the clip a little later in this video. He goes, "Donald, we did a cap, Donald, a cap, a hard line, a hard line, a hard line. I thought you'd like it, Donald. I thought you'd like it, Donald. Yes, we're doing this EV deal with China, but it's a hard line. It's a cap. It's a cap." They have to repeat it over and over. World leaders know that Donald Trump is cognitively and physically declining. We all know. It's just American corporate news doesn't cover it, but you can literally see. Look how Carney is looking at Donald Trump. He's looking at the way, if you've had a family member with the unfortunate situation of having them in hospice care and they are clearly not there, and you're looking at them and you're like, I know you're physically there, but you're not there. And look at him. I mean, here he is all alone on the stage with G7 leaders. Like people don't know how to even interact with him. We need to watch this whole video. I want to go again, receipt by receipt, hear what's going on. So at one point, you have French President Emmanuel Macron say, okay, we're going to take our group photo right now. And Donald Trump is just completely unaware that everyone else is posing for a photo. I mean, we have what the ultimate photo looks like, and Donald Trump's looking away. But here he is just in that video. Let's just watch this video. Let's play it.
Regardez les dents. May, could you have a look to this guy?
Tournez-vous. Regardez-les, derrière vous.
Georgia, you have the official.
Then when Donald Trump was on stage with the G7 leaders, a confused Trump was wandering off in the wrong direction, and they had to guide him back in front of the G7 world leaders. You can watch this for yourself.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. We straight into the now.
The other side. The other side. My wonderful later. I need you. How are you?
Hello, my friend. Hello, my friend. How are you? How are you?
I'm good.
You have Donald Trump grabbing the hand of India's Prime Minister Modi. He grabs the hand and the wrist for support because he was going to fall over. You can watch for yourself. Let's play it.
worth financially, the more you're worth as a human being. And he has a very, very deep void that he's trying desperately to fill. And money is his preferred way to do that. Of course, it's not going to work because we see these lawsuits becoming increasingly frequent and the numbers are getting bigger and bigger. And he doesn't let anything go ever, even if he has indeed won in a sense. Like I defy him to prove what his damages are. He's back in the White House. He's making money hand over fist. And I think there are cases in which the lawsuit is vengeful. It's to get retribution. I think Letitia James Comey, but sometimes it's a mechanism to simply to enrich himself in a very easy way. He's a track record here, suing media corporations, for example, and despite the fact that they're frivolous, they settle to his benefit. So he's not going to stop. I mean, he's suing me for $100 million. So, and I think that he understands now that there are bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. I mean, but really taxpayers would be the ones paying these out, which is extraordinary, whatever Americans feel about that. So with all the developments in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz found himself having to talk
until she said it. Sit with that for a second because it's a genuinely remarkable admission. The President of the United States blindsided by his own wife's press conference in his own house on the single most radioactive topic of his second term. So Mary Trump goes on the Daily Beast podcast with host Joanna Coles days later and lays out her read, and I want to walk through her actual reasoning point by point because it's sharper than the tabloid headlines made it sound. And her reading of this family psychology didn't start with Donald or with this White House statement. It's rooted in something much older and more personal. Her own father, Fred Trump Jr., Donald's older brother, was, by her account and multiple others, the gentle one in a family that prized ruthlessness above everything. He wanted to be an airline pilot instead of joining the family real estate business, and the family, by Mary's telling, ground him down for it, treating warmth and sensitivity as weakness to be stamped out. He died of alcoholism-related causes at 42. Mary has said the core lesson she watched her grandfather, Fred Sr., teach his children was stark. You're either a killer or you're nothing. She argues Donald absorbed that lesson completely, while her father couldn't survive it. That's the actual foundation of her expertise here, not just a clinical degree in the abstract, but a professional's tools turned on the exact family system that, by her account, cost her own father his life. When she reads a public statement from inside that family and says, "This doesn't add up, and here's the psychological reason why," she's applying a lens she built specifically because she needed to survive and understand that system herself. Point 1 from her Melania analysis, the documentary record doesn't line up cleanly with a simple denial. Mary's words, she claims to have had nothing to do with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. There is so much documentary evidence to the contrary. Now, to be precise and fair, because that's the standard on this channel. This is Mary Trump's characterization, and it references the broader documented record, the photographs from Mar-a-Lago dating back to the late 1990s and 2000, the released 2002 email correspondence with Maxwell that Melania herself acknowledged and characterized as trivial. Nobody has produced evidence Melania committed any crime. She has never been accused of one by law enforcement, and she and Donald have consistently denied wrongdoing. What Mary is pointing at is the gap between "I had absolutely nothing to do with these people" and a documented multi-year social overlap that included a friendly email exchange. That's the specific claim, not an accusation of crime, but an observation that the denial may have been broader than the record supports. Point 2, and this is the one I think is actually the sharpest piece of analysis in the whole interview, the strategic question. Mary said she had trouble figuring out why Melania would get out in front of an issue her own husband has spent a year calling a Democrat hoax and trying to distance himself from. Her theory, unless of course, and this has been the joke going around, he's trying to distract from Iran. Now, that line is doing something clever. She's citing a joke that was reportedly circulating, not asserting it as her own confirmed fact, which...
Senator, first, Director Vogt has addressed that quote multiple times in this committee.
I'm asking you what you believe. Do you believe civil servants are the villains?
As I mentioned in my testimony, I think the OMB civil servants, who are the ones I work most closely with, as well as Director Vogt, who has a wonderful relationship with those civil servants, are among the best and brightest in the federal government.
Excellent. So you don't want to put them in trauma, do you?
Senator, that quote you're referring to, direct your vote as addressed, is related to certain bureaucracies in the federal government.
It's just a question for you, not for Mr. Vogt. Do you want to put federal employees in trauma? Yes or no?
Senator, you're directly
I'm asking
referring
what
to
your view is. Do you think it's a good idea to put federal employees in trauma?
I work very well with the civil servants at OMB. The quote that you're referring to was a reference to weaponized bureaucracies.
Mr. Duncan, I'm asking you right now what your view is. Do you want to put federal employees into trauma? Yes or no?
Senator, like I said, I completely support the civil servants that work at OMB. And that quote that you're referring to has been taken out of context
I was
and has
asking
been addressed by the director up here.
So it's interesting you don't want to provide a direct answer. So listen.
Let me show you what that cross-examination now looked like when you had Democratic Senator Slotkin talk about how the Trump regime officials are politicizing where budget funds go to for disaster relief, for research. They are stealing it from blue states, and they are not providing critical funding, and Hal Duncan would be someone responsible for doing that, and he seems in lockstep with that plan. Watch this cross-examination right here. Let's play it.
I want to ask to Mr. Duncan, you've had an interesting couple of days up here on the Hill, made some news, gone viral a couple of times. And I just feel like this idea that to get a federal grant, the rules have been rewritten so that you can reject any organization that represents, quote, anti-American values, and anyone who, quote, damages the reputation of the government. So you're going to be in an important position of power. You want the big job. You answer the big questions. If a university that was receiving federal dollars for a research grant into cancer, but they allowed a protest, a peaceful protest of the Iran war on their campus, would that be, quote, damaging to the reputation of the government?
Senator, I appreciate the question. As you know, with 2 CFR, it's signed off by all 41 agencies.
Right, but in your mind, you're asking to be a decision maker, right? So I understand there's a chain. I was a federal government employee for a long time, but you're up here for Senate confirmation, so it's a big job. Is a protest, a First Amendment peaceful protest on a college campus threaten the federal dollars that they are getting for cancer research under the rules that you will be enforcing, yes or no?
Senator, you're asking a hypothetical question, but I would note that this
Well, we have protests. We do. I mean, I have University of Michigan and Michigan State. There are protests from time to time, that's for sure. So it's not hypothetical. This is something that literally in 15, 20 days you could be dealing with. Is a First Amendment protest on a college campus enough to be, quote, anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration?
In the hypothetical question that you're asking related to grants for cancer research, this administration is committed to gold standard science and wants to advance the best cancer research that we possibly can.
Okay, so if they can have a protest on their campus, and I would just say slashing cancer research and slashing our science institutions around the country, and making us have to be literally 1/10 of the medical research that's going on in like places like China and Europe is not a way to uphold a gold standard for cancer research. And I say that for a woman who's, got cancer in her family. If a domestic violence shelter receives a federal grant, but they also post complaints about this administration's cutting of domestic violence funding, will that put them at risk of being labeled anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration?
Senator, again, you're asking hypothetical questions.
Top Democrats are asking Tulsi Gabbard to explain why she attended an FBI raid in Fulton County when agents seized ballots related to President Trump's 2020 election defeat. Here's what the president said when asked to explain.
Mr. President, what was Tulsi Gabbard doing at an election center in Georgia today?
She's working very hard on trying to keep the election safe, and she's done a very good job. And they, as you know, they got into the votes. You got a signed judge's order in Georgia, and you're going to see some interesting things happening. They've been trying to get there for a long time.
Joining me now is our friend, author and psychologist Mary Trump, also President Trump's niece. She hosts the Mary Trump Show podcast, and she's written books about how Trump's childhood shaped his first presidency. Welcome, Mary. Can you tell me what your uncle means by trying to keep the election safe, and what is he suggesting is yet to come?
I think what he means
is the careful, precise way a trained clinician actually talks. But underneath the joke is a real strategic puzzle. Why would this White House, midway through a war and a year into an Epstein Files firestorm, choose this moment to have the First Lady personally reopen the exact wound they've spent months trying to close? Mary's answer ultimately wasn't distracting. It was more specific and, I think, more interesting. She's obviously getting ahead of something. Getting ahead of something is not hiding something, is being revealed right now. She anticipates something is coming, and she wants her version on the record first. That's a specific psychological read. The preemptive statement, the inoculation move from someone whose actual profession is reading exactly that kind of behavior. And it only makes sense against the backdrop of just how large the Epstein Files fight had already become by April 2026. This wasn't a fringe story. Congress had already passed, and Trump had already signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act months earlier under significant public pressure, a law forcing the release of the government's investigative files. The Justice Department had already produced millions of pages. Reporters had already documented troubling gaps, missing material, questionable redactions in what had been released. Trump himself had spent the better part of a year alternately calling the entire subject a hoax and trying to steer interviews away from it entirely. That's the pressure cooker Melania stepped into, voluntarily, with a statement nobody on her husband's staff appears to have vetted in advance. Whatever her actual motive, the effect of the statement, dragging the one subject the White House most wanted buried back onto every front page for another cycle is not in dispute. Mary Trump's red was about the why.
And this video I showed you yesterday, right? Where Donald Trump was like shaking hands with French President Emmanuel Macron, and Trump lacked the strength in his right arm to shake Macron's hand. You can see for yourself here. Let's play it.
So I want to congratulate the president. Last night, Cyril Gahn won the fight against a great fighter, supposed to be unbeatable. And that was it. Cyril is from France. Did you watch the fight?
Yeah. Not in direct, but I saw it this morning.
That was a great fight. It was a great evening at the White House.
I was very proud, Cyril.
Thank
you. Bienvenue.
And then the same thing we saw with Prime Minister Modi grabbing the hand. And we've seen Donald Trump have to do that with Melania a lot, also using her as kind of as a way to keep his balance. He's really losing his balance before our eyes. Here he does it. I showed you this clip yesterday, but I want to tie this all together with Brigitte Macron, French President Emmanuel Macron's wife. So you can see here. Let's just play this clip right now.
Thank you.
And then, of course, Donald Trump just doesn't even know basic facts. Like, he doesn't know where Qatar is on a map. He tells the Emir of Qatar that Qatar shares a land border with Iran. It doesn't. You'd actually have to cross 3 countries. It's across the Persian Gulf, but it doesn't share a land border. You can see for yourself what he says right here. Let's play this clip.
Any money in Iran. Working with Qatar and the people of Qatar was really a pleasure. They were tough. They were strong. You know, they are the closest to Iran physically. So with other countries, I noticed I had to travel about 45 minutes to get there. With you, you could walk right across the border. So you were in a more dangerous position.
I know that's deeply disturbing, deeply, deeply disturbing. Then when Donald Trump's with the Emir of Abu Dhabi or the president of the United Arab Emirates, Donald Trump starts talking about having dinner at Versailles, and then he just kind of starts rambling about how the stock market's great. He goes from that he had dinner at Versailles and it's amazing to the market. It's very weird. Here, play this clip.
So, well, I'm a fan of beautiful places. And I was leaving in the afternoon, and then the French president, who happens to be a very nice man, invited me to dinner at Versailles. And Versailles is not a gold leaf. Versailles is the real deal. And I said, I'd like to do it. I mean, all it means is that I get home later in the evening, meaning early in the morning, and I'm not a big sleeper anyway. I'll be in the Oval Office I won't lose any time in the Oval Office. So I have to say this, our country is doing really well. We're doing better than we've ever done as a country. The stock market's the highest, everything's the highest, 401k.
And then when Donald Trump met with French President Emmanuel Macron, all he wanted to do was talk about the UFC fight. And he's like, I called you last night to talk about the French fighter, Here's what he says. Let's play it. And that's what Trump continuously was talking about with Macron, the French fighter. Do you know the French fighter? He says it again. Here, play this clip.
Happened, but had two very good conversations yesterday. We'll be talking about it. And we had a really exciting, I think maybe one of the most incredible evenings in the history of the White House. We had an evening last night with the fighters, and I was very happy. I called last night, very late last night, to congratulate you, because in the heavyweight division, a French fighter won. I don't know, is that maybe more important than the World Cup? To some people it might be. To some people it might be. You have a good team in the world. Yeah. Very good team, but you have good fighters too. And you're a great country, and it's an honor to be with you. Thank you very much.
And then we've also seen this a lot lately, where Donald Trump projects how physically attracted he is to male reporters. He attacks the female reporters. We've seen that, right? He calls them piggy. He calls them the B word. He says horrible things about female reporters. Remember all those videos where we see the just the kind of lashing out. When it comes to the male reporters, Donald Trump appears physically attracted to them. He does this a lot. You're so handsome. You're so good looking. And so while Donald Trump was with, again, the president of the United Arab Emirates, that's what he was talking about. Oh, this man's so handsome. He's really good looking. Here, play this clip.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding this.
What a nice looking person. Is he from your country? Is he from your country?
Absolutely.
No, he's got such a nice way about him. My people are they're so mean. Look at him. The handsome guy can put him. Be careful. No, I can put him in a movie right now. Go ahead.
And then just hearing Donald Trump talk about how he never wanted regime change, and that was never something that he's ever cared about, when obviously the whole thing he's been saying over and over again was regime change. And now he's saying, I don't care about regime change. I want to show you this data point right here. Let's play it.
Country. So, again, I don't believe the regime change. You know, I've watched regime changes for years. They never work. It has to just happen. I can tell you this is a country where
it's never enough. And I've written about this, and it's fascinating to me how it continues to be true, but it's becoming increasingly true. The more power he gets, the more wealth he amasses, the more he looks back to engage in revisionist history in order to convince himself and everybody around him that he actually won everything. So I think it's pretty simple, actually. Donald is a deeply insecure person. And in my family, being a loser was literally the worst thing you could possibly be. It was deserving of humiliation and worse. So he is still trying to rewrite that narrative to protect his fragile ego.
So, as you know, this week, he did actually file a lawsuit against the IRS, and it seeks a $10 billion taxpayer-financed payout over the leaking of his tax returns some years back. And last October, he also demanded $230 million from the Justice Department as compensation for the federal criminal investigations that he faced after losing in 2020. What's this really about? I mean, you mentioned money. Is that what it's all about?
Yes, it is indeed. Because Donald, it's never, as I said, it is never enough, because going back for decades, money is the only thing that gives people in my family a sense of self-worth. So the more you're worth
to the White House officials, as well as the president in the last week. And here's some of what he said about those talks. Let's watch.
This is what's so hard to deal with this president. You have to know the psychology of how to do it. Look, I know who I'm dealing with, and I know the reason that he was calling me was he needed something from us. He needed it not because this is a horrific situation of a violation of human rights, the potential murder of Minnesotans, an assault on our state that is unprecedented, I think, in American history. The reason he was calling was his poll numbers dropped and it looked bad on TV.
Do you agree there's a psychology involved in talking to the president? And if so, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I agree with Governor Walz completely. Donald is not the least bit concerned about the violence that's being perpetrated. In fact, he's ordering it to be perpetrated. His goal here is to create circumstances in American cities that either lead to Americans staying home and keeping silent, or to clashes like we've seen in Minnesota that can give him the opportunity to invoke the Insurrection Act or declare martial law. I think that the time of appeasement is over. We've seen this play out on the world stage as well. People are finally starting to realize that the worst thing to do is to capitulate to Donald, because he sees that as an opportunity to try to get more. People need to stand up and stop playing ball with him and draw a line in the sand. I think that negotiating with an administration that never operates in good faith is a very bad strategy. And again, it only leads to a situation in which he continues to have the upper hand.
Mary, as you look ahead, what are your gravest concerns about this administration relative to the country?
My gravest concern is that there is nobody in a position to do anything about it who will try at least to slow this down. What we've seen since January 1st has been, on the one hand, not surprising, but just a shockingly quick decline of America, both domestically and internationally. So we're not just looking at a situation in which American institutions continue to be dismantled. We're not just looking at a situation in which essentially a Gestapo is being unleashed on the American people. We're looking at the possibility that the Trump regime is going to unravel the post-World War II order.
The what, that it backfired as a containment strategy, if that's what it was, is just a matter of record. And point 3 from that interview is worth its own sec, because it's where Mary Trump stops talking as a psychologist and starts talking as someone with a real moral stake in how survivors get treated. Because Melania's call for survivors to testify openly landed very differently depending on who you asked, and the honest, fair version of this story requires you to actually hear from them, not just from Mary Trump. According to NPR's reporting at the time, survivors themselves were split. Alicia Arden, who says Epstein assaulted her decades ago as a young model and who filed a police report before his 2006 indictment, told NPR she's willing to testify and said she thought it was brave of Melania to speak up. She even said she'd welcome Melania testifying alongside them. Attorney Gloria Allred, who represents dozens of survivors, said she was glad the First Lady made the statement and supports a hearing, while cautioning survivors shouldn't be subpoenaed against their will. But others pushed back hard. Sisters Maria and Annie Farmer, both identified survivors, said in a joint statement that what they want is accountability, transparency, and justice, and that the federal government, if serious, should ask survivors what they want rather than asking more of them now. And Marina Lacerda, identified in a 2019 indictment as a minor victim, posted directly questioning the sincerity of it. You want to re-traumatize us and ask us to go in front of Congress and tell them our story, which we have told some of them already, and then do absolutely nothing. That's the fair, complete picture. Genuine survivors, genuinely divided, some grateful, some deeply skeptical of the timing and the sincerity. And it's exactly that skepticism that Mary Trump was channeling when she called Melania's framing cruel and insulting, her actual quote from a separate segment of that same interview. Survivors have demonstrated a kind of unthinkable bravery in the face of intense opposition from the President of the United States. So to say that they need to do more and she has nothing to do with it was just cruel and insulting. Her point wasn't that Melania has no right to speak. It's that asking survivors to do more emotional labor in service of a statement that Mary reads as self-protective is its own kind of harm. Regardless of whatever legal exoneration Melania is entitled to and has consistently maintained, I want to be very careful and precise here, because this is exactly the kind of subject where precision matters most. Nobody in this story, not Mary Trump, not the survivors quoted, not the reporting, has alleged that Melania Trump committed a crime. she has denied any wrongdoing consistently and has not been named as a subject of any investigation. What's actually being debated by everyone involved is the sincerity and the timing of a statement, and how to fairly balance a public figure's right to defend her reputation against survivors' concerns about being used as political cover.
We have seen that script, by the way.
Keep that distinction in your head for the rest of this video. Now, the broader context, because Mary Trump didn't stop at Melania. And this is where the psychologist file on the whole ecosystem
Well, my
gets genuinely
understanding from the
interesting.
2020 election is we had an election.
And
Joe
who won
Biden
it?
Joe Biden was certified the winner of that election. That is a fact.
Who won the popular vote?
From what I recall in reporting at the time, that was Joe Biden.
And who won the Electoral College in the 2020 election?
Again, my recollection, and he served as president, Joe Biden would have been certified the winner of the Electoral College vote as well.
Did you discuss your answers to these questions with the White House before coming here today?
No.
Let me ask you, was the Capitol attacked on January 6th?
I don't know if I would use the term attacked. I mean, we had activity outside the Capitol, protests and such, and there was violence on the Capitol grounds.
You have to be now the author of the most obvious understatement that there was activity outside the Capitol on January 6th. Was it attacked? You've seen the videos. You're supposed to be the Inspector General. Capitol Police were injured. Some died. Was the Capitol attacked?
So again, it's more a term that you're using, attacked. There was protest activity. There was violence on Capitol grounds. Those people were prosecuted.
Well, there was protest activity?
There was protest activity. People went to the Capitol grounds. People entered the Capitol building, which is contrary, as far as I know, to law.
But you wouldn't agree with me that the Capitol was attacked?
I just don't agree with the term attack. When I think of attack, I think
Were
of
police
assaulting.
officers attacked on that day?
There was physical violence outside the Capitol that day.
But the Capitol Police weren't attacked?
So
what is it about that word that so troubles you?
It's not that I'm troubled by it. The term attack to me seems to imply like there was a coordinated effort to attack specific things.
Let me ask you.
There was physical violence associated with protests.
I regard these
Capitol.
kinds of questions as a test of your prospective independence. And so far, I think you're failing that test.
Okay.
And I hope my colleagues will agree that the Inspector General of the Department of Justice should recognize reality and facts for what they are.
Going back to Hal Duncan now for a moment, let me show you as Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen cross-examined Hal Duncan right here on a very important issue. Let's play it.
You're aware of the fact that the IRS has warned that this year's tax season was at risk due to staffing shortages. Are you aware of that fact?
Senator, obviously we're trying to...
I'm just asking you if you're aware of that fact, that they warned that this year's tax season efficiency was at risk because of staffing shortages. Are you
Senator,
not aware of that?
I'm not aware of the exact item you're referring to. I'm happy to take a look at it if it's in front of you.
Yeah.
But obviously everything that we are doing is toward a commitment for efficiency for the American people.
Well, in fact, you've had to rehire people who were fired at the IRS. That doesn't sound like it's more efficient to me. The same is true at FEMA. FEMA reinstated fire disaster response personnel ahead of the hurricane season because they were unprepared. Were you aware of that fact?
Senator, I'm not aware of this specific thing. That would be a FEMA-related item that I've been...
A lot of this, of course, feeds up through the OMB. Same is true of the National Weather Service. GSA cited staffing shortages on mission-critical needs. Were you aware of that?
I'd have to defer to the National Weather Service.
In fact, by early this year, an estimated 25,000 federal employees have been rehired after being initially terminated. Do you know how much that's cost the taxpayer, rehiring the same people who were in the job before?
Senator, I don't have an estimate in front of me, but we're always working to optimize staffing levels.
Well, I have an estimate from the Partnership for Public Service. They're a nonpartisan entity. They say just that process of having to go through rehiring the same people that were fired cost the taxpayer $12 million. That doesn't sound more efficient to me. Mr. Duncan, your boss at OMB,
do you expect him to try to run for a third time?
I think it's more likely that he just won't leave. I think that's the likelier scenario.
Just won't leave the presidency. How could that be?
I think, well, that's what Maduro did, I believe. And I think that he's perfectly capable. The only reason that didn't happen in 2020 is because there were still a few people in his administration who weren't willing to go along with that. But we are in very different territory 4 years later.
So even without an electoral mandate, he would try to carry on the presidency. That would be a moment.
Full nerd honesty, same as I give you every time, not quite as advertised. The bombshell was Melania's delivered live at the White House unscheduled. Mary's dissection of it came a few days later on a podcast, not live television. And there's no documented instance of Trump or Melania publicly firing back at Mary over these specific comments, no meltdown to report, so I'm not going to invent one. What actually happened is, in its way, more interesting than a live TV shouting match. The single most credentialed internal critic this family has, a real psychologist, a real source behind a real Pulitzer, looked at a strange, unscheduled, camera-ready statement from the First Lady and offered a precise, careful, professionally informed read. This doesn't quite add up, and here's specifically why. Not a scream, a diagnosis. And in a family whose entire brand depends on controlling the narrative, having the one member with actual clinical training on the outside, calmly explaining what she thinks she's watching, that's a different, quieter, and in some ways more permanent kind of exposure than any live TV blow-up could ever be. Melania wanted the lies to end today, she said. Mary Trump just wants you to notice what question never actually got answered. Hey, if you made it all the way here with me, thank you. Genuinely. You're the entire reason this channel exists. And on a story that touches something as serious as this one, I don't take your trust for granted for a single second. We're independent here. No giant network sitting on top of us. Nobody deciding what we're allowed to say. So we can actually sit with the nuanced survivors who disagree with each other. Allegations that are allegations and not convictions. Anissa's theory presented as a theory. That's the job. If this deep dive gave you the fuller picture, hit that like button. It genuinely helps us beat the algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell because there's always a next one. And share this with one person who only saw the headline version of this story. I'm going to skip the usual sound off in the comments on this one given the subject matter, but if you or someone you know has been affected by anything discussed here, please reach out to a professional or a trusted support line. This has been your independent, carefully researched breakdown of a story that deserves more care than the headlines gave it. Stay sharp out there, see you in the next one.